You're listening to Errol Parker and Clancy Overall, editors of the Batuta Advocate, on Desert Rock FM.
Hello and welcome back to the Batuta Advocate radio show. My name is Errol Parker. Here with me again, as always, is Clancy Overall. Clancy, how's your week been?
Yeah, good, mate. We as has been reported in the newspaper, we felt a few tremors here on Wednesday. Yeah, it was a rather scary time for us all, but we've experienced this before and we will rebuild. But yeah, outside of that, things are good. Still outside of lockdown and hoping to keep it that way.
Well, yeah, mate. There were a lot of road crews out having to fix the roads after the earthquake we had up here on Wednesday. Gas works, various things like that. But one thing, though, that pales in comparison to this earthquake that the nation felt from Broome to Bega, from Cairns to Esperance, whereas some of the ripples coming out of Canberra this previous week about the one-time Attorney General, Christian Porter, taking money from what essentially was a discretionary trust, blind trust, if you're like Barnaby Joyce and have a degree in accounting. There were questions whether was Christian Porter acting in the faith of the law, in the true spirit of the law, or was Christian Porter being corrupt? And those are questions that we will never know answers to because we don't have a federal corruption watchdog. However, today on the show we have Ross Jones. Ross Jones is an independent investigative journalist working for Independent Australia, among other things. He's written various books on different facets of Australian politics in recent years, namely the James Ashby case. And most importantly today, he is here in his capacity as being one of the head honchos of the federal ICAC Now party, which has just been registered with the AEC. And he joins us here today. Ross, how are you?
Good, thanks. Good.
Now, just delving into this question of having a federal ICAC, why haven't we had a federal ICAC in Australian federal politics before?
There have been a couple of attempts at it. The Greens put up a proposal a couple of years ago into the Senate, and it got through the Senate. They got bounced in the House of Representatives. Helen Haynes in the House of Reps put up an independent bill. Morrison and the LNP, though, refused to hear that bill, refused to let it through.
Yep.
And I think, in answer to your question, the real reason is because the LNP don't want a federal ICAC. They certainly don't want an ICAC.
So how is the ICAC, as we know it, basically in New South Wales? It's the Independent Crime and Corruption Commission thereabouts. But how did that come about in New South Wales?
Well, I think that was a while ago now, but I think Nick Greiner started it, and then he was its first victim, pretty much. But it's evolved since then. It's going on quite well. The whole current thing with Maguire really came out of their inquiry into Canterbury Council, just a little passing inquiry into Canterbury Council and a wiretap, and Bob's your uncle. You've got Maguire.
Queensland is familiar with this kind of watchdog, and we certainly don't have a watchdog with gummy teeth in the shape of the Triple C. That was kind of, I guess, brought into existence under Joe, or after Joe, at the fall of Joe. And it's funny, it might never have happened had that ABC Four Corners been aired, the Moonlight State with Chris Masters, where he kind of blew the lid off the joke, which is what the police and the politicians were referring to their syndicate at the time in the 80s. And at the same time, Joe was out of the state, so there was an acting deputy who then called for a Fitzgerald inquiry. That was all chance. Yeah. There's a lot of chance required to get something like this off the ground, usually.
There is.
And I don't think, if you're stamping out any kind of opportunity for that to take place, if you don't have a deputy willing to keep you honest or the likes, if you don't even have a public broadcaster willing to broadcast those things, which we also know our government's keen to kind of slash as much as they can, you don't really get these results. But you've come an interesting way in, Ross, with the federal ICAC Now party. Can you tell us about the kind of the grassroots of that and when those rumblings started and who kind of got together to talk about this?
We started about 3 years ago when I was working with Independent Australia as investigations editor. The amount of stuff that used to come across our desk was enormous, but you can't stand up and allege someone's corrupt. You can't just stand there and say, mate, you're corrupt, because that way lies pain and lots of lawsuits. But still, nobody was doing anything about it. The Greens had put up a bill that was successful in the Senate, but not in the Reps, and Helen Haynes' bill failed didn't even get put up in the Reps. So a lot of our readers got together and thought, well, this is just getting out of hand. We need to bring some political clout directly to bear on this because nobody's doing anything about it whatsoever. So through the pages of Independent Australia, we started floating the idea of we'd have a party called Federal ICAC now, which happily abbreviates to FIN, which is pretty good. And a lot of people responded very positively, extremely positively. So I think we started it in May 2019. By 2020, we had our members all up and we had enough members to go with. We submitted our proposal or our application to the AEC in October 2020.
Yeah.
And at that time, you needed 500 people on the electoral roll, valid electors, to support your party. You have to provide that list to the AEC. They check it, they go through all their checks on it and verify that they all are indeed members. And if they are, and you've done everything else right, you get a party.
Yep.
So eventually we ended up with a political party. And we got that in September the 2nd, because when we first lodged it, it's supposed to take 12 weeks. Then they had the Groom by-election almost straight away. Mm-hmm. And when they've got a by-election, the AEC all just put their Ugg boots on and go home. So they weren't processing anything. So we had to wait till the end of that, and that was February. And then they dragged on and on and on and on. So we didn't hear anything for an awfully long time. So we finally got it through in September. And then almost immediately, even before they'd announced that we were successful, the Libs put another bill through Parliament called the Electoral Amendment Act 2021, which effectively raised the limit for political parties from 500 to 1,500, which is a hell of a jump. I mean, that's triple the thing. And it's retrospective. So even if you're in a situation like we are, where we've got our 550 members, through the AEC and all good, they say now, I'm sorry, you need 1,500.
Okay.
So we'll probably get there, the pace we're going, but...
What are you at now?
About 1,200.
Oh, you'll get over the line.
Yeah. So we need about 300.
300 listeners right now. If you want a federal ICAC.
I know that we do have a lot of listeners to this show and a lot of readers of the Batuta Advocate too that are very concerned about corruption at a federal level. So I think you'll probably at least get 300 of them. I mean, of the 50 to 60,000 people that listen to this show every day, we should be able to get some.
That'd be great.
Yeah. Well, we also don't like to engage in political corruption. This isn't particularly an endorsement, but the only person we've ever endorsed is obviously Bob Cutter. Yeah. And I'm sure he would back everything you put on the table, wouldn't he?
Yeah, I think he would, actually. Yeah. Bob's come out and said, he wants a federal ICAC.
Yeah.
So he's behind it.
There was a little thing that they were talking about in the Libs for a while there.
Yeah, they said they essentially promised some sort of watchdog tribunal that could maybe put someone in political timeout for a period. What was the watchdog that they proposed but haven't yet formed?
It was called the CIC, something Integrity Commission, Commonwealth Integrity Commission or something, because you hardly remember the name because it was so ridiculous. They set that up so that it was mainly to investigate and scare the tribe out of public service and senior police.
Yeah.
That's what it was mainly to do, because they could investigate those, no problem. When it came to investigating political corruption, though, an outside party couldn't make a recommendation to that body.
Mm-hmm.
It wouldn't investigate
Yeah.
it. So it had to be a crime.
Yeah.
They have to commit a crime, and the crime has to be committed before it goes to that body.
So it has to come from essentially a state DPP, really?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Jackie Lambie described it as a toothless lap tiger.
Yeah, it is.
Not a watchdog at all.
Yeah. I think the land even described it as a toothless ewe.
So the federal ICAC now is what is obviously the big play. We don't know when the next election's going to be, and we hope with this retrospective rule
Albo
changes.
reckons March, he was telling us. I think.
It gives us a few months to get the process, providing there's no by-elections in then. We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see. Pierce might open up pretty soon, but we never know. We need a federal ICAC to see someone like Christian Porter out the door, because there's a new level of entitlement, I guess, we've seen growing in our political class that it's almost unprecedented. That once upon a time, Barry O'Farrell stands down for a bottle of wine. Back under Howard, there were ministers who were being sacked for not declaring colour televisions that they brought back with them overseas. Now we've got some of the most heinous crimes we've really heard of in recent memory alleged against staffers sitting politicians and everyone kind of, I think the new protocol is mental health leave and to sue the fuck out of the ABC. There's nothing else that we can expect from them. So this should be an interesting thorn in the side of Canberra if we can get a couple. You obviously you're running straight at the Senate.
We are running straight at the Senate. Look, to tell you the honest truth, it's crossed our mind. There's a couple of seats that maybe we go at, but it's not really appropriate for us to represent local people. That's not what we're doing.
Yeah.
We're representing local communities. So,
well, they were
the
saying,
Senate.
you know, when Anthony Albanese was elected to the House of Reps, his biggest competition in Grainland back then was not, you know, the Liberal Party, all of the Greens. It was the no second airport. No, it was the no second runway party at Kingsford Smith. So you know they did have the east-west, which was the first runway down there, and then they put in one north-south, and they wanted to put in that one as the far east, and that was Albo's biggest competition there because they didn't want the aircraft noise in Marrickville, which
self-interested voters, plenty of them out there.
So in saying that, what more can a single issue party bring to the table other than its single issue?
There's a couple of stages to it. Once we get our party firmly established, right at the moment we can't really announce candidates or do any of those things because we can't say those things.
Yeah, you haven't got 1,500.
People aren't going to say, yes, I'm going to run for Finn, and then suddenly there's no party. They're not going to, you know. We need to have all those ducks in a row before we come out and say things. Once we do that, though, and I think that's not going to be in that too distant future, hopefully, a micro party, which is what we were, has not only the ambition of getting into a Senate and getting some say in it that way, it also has an impact before the election. And that's a lot of the stuff that we want to do. In other words, try and draw the public's attention to it before the election as a valid political party, speaking from that level, which increases. If you're just a lobby group or just somebody, you know, mucking around, the impact of what you're saying, I think, is a lot less. Whereas if you're a political party and you come out and challenge people politically at that level, I think that we're raising the awareness in Australians. And it's crucial, mate, because this place is going to hell in a handbasket with these people. They really are getting out of control. And
has it gotten worse in recent years?
I think even the last couple of years it's accelerated.
Underlying, you know.
I mean, really, it is just recent, but you don't need to see anything more than Christian Porter to see what's going on, do you? The whole thing is the effrontery of the whole thing is just, it's an insult to Australians.
Well, even as the highest law officer in the country, I mean, even that, you know, was a bit on the nose for, you know, your run-of-the-mill infrastructure minister. Yeah. You know, but, you know...
Or a backbencher.
To be the arbiter of what is right and wrong legally in this country and to engage in that type of stuff's a bit, you know, how you going?
And to sue the ABC, and they didn't even name him. That was just a petulant, knee-jerk action.
And Louise, our friend.
Yeah. I mean, obviously he didn't have the money in the bank to do it.
Oh, Christ, no.
But he was probably promised that money before, I imagine, but that's just speculative.
I mean, there's anyone that could have done it. We all know that there's a lot of people that don't like the ABC. There's plenty of people out there that would have gladly filled him up with money to run the ball at their enemy. Your enemy's my enemy kind of thing. We can't say we can't say any names because we'll probably get fucking sued.
The ABC,
that's it.
And they've just everyone from people, you know, certain tiny countries within a city in Europe that's in charge of one of the major churches in this planet, you know, perhaps them or maybe some other people.
People that make money from digging rocks out of the ground and burning them at an accelerating rate.
There's the other point there. I mean, I think it's got worse under COVID. There's no doubt about it. You know, that's just a nice big comfort blanket for them to all hide under while they get up to what they're doing. Yeah.
Just one giant wall pull this COVID.
And that the Prime Minister's initial cabinet was just full of mining guys and resource people and gas people, and so that's what they're going to do. They just frack the hell out of the place.
So there were changes made to how preferences flow in the federal upper house. So it kind of makes it harder for people like your Ricky Muirs, you know, your Jackie Lambies to get into the Senate.
It does, that's right.
Yeah. How have those changes affected you?
Well, they haven't affected us all yet because
Not,
they're not
well,
there.
there was, essentially a much easier path into the Senate, for a party like Finn a couple of years ago,
Yes,
but
it
now
was.
it's much more difficult.
And I think that's how it affects us. It's going to be much more
Yep.
difficult. We need a lot of things to fall into place in
Yeah.
a nice pattern for us to get there. The path's there if we want.
But even then, I suppose you could say that if the Finn existed a couple of years ago, a lot of those people who ended up in the Senate probably wouldn't have been there in the first place.
I think that's right.
We've previously interviewed a man colloquially known as the preference whisperer, Glenn Drury. If you are listening, Glenn, we might need a bit of pro bono magic from you.
Well, yes, we actually interviewed Glenn. I think he was, he would have been the second or third episode that we had of the Batuta Advocate podcast. That was when we decided to move our radio show onto the internet too, so people outside the Diamantina could listen to it. No, but Glenn, he took us out on his boat out into international waters, and he gave us a real, stern talking to before the interview, and he told us, he was telling us industry secrets about, how he got grossly underqualified people like Darren Hinch into the Senate, but he also did a lot of good. He got, people who deserved a voice in federal politics, like people like your Ricky Muirs. He deserved to be there much more than Darren did.
Yeah, or Malcolm Roberts or the like.
But yeah, so what does your path look like now to the Senate? Like, do you have to essentially get more votes than the other parties?
No, I think it's still the equal quota
Yeah.
thing. You've got to remember this election coming up is a half Senate election. It's not a full Senate election. So only half the number of senators
Yeah.
come up for re-election. I think in New South Wales, I worked out to get us up in New South Wales on a quota, it's going to be about 800,000.
Yeah.
Okay.
Give or take.
So basically, you've got about as much chance as anyone else, really. But you've probably got more chance than Christina Keneally had, I guess, now that she's gone off to the lower house. Well, even that, who knows? She might not have been able to do that if a party like Finn had existed a couple of years ago and was in the Senate now.
If we can get across, I think a lot of people are relaxing, thinking we'll get a federal ICAC because Labor are going to come in, and when Labor come in, we're going to get a federal ICAC. They've said that. No worries. That'll get done.
I can believe it when I see it.
Thank you. First of all, you got to think Labor are going to win, and they look, they're doing okay at the moment.
Well, we're not listening to the bookies. We're not listening to the polls either.
We're not, what was last time? You couldn't get on with $1.01, I don't think, last time. So, it's the chances of them getting in up. Look, they're good, but there's no guarantee that they're going to get up. And even if they do get up, their proposal for an ICAC is much more robust than the Libs, of course. But nevertheless, they don't guarantee funding for it. They don't.
Yeah.
There's all these little peripheral things that they're not guaranteeing, and there's a couple of little loose holes through there. Whereas you get a bill like Helen Haynes, it's well thought through.
Yeah.
And that would be an effective bill.
You're an expert in political corruption because you spent a lot of time on the beat chasing it and ripping the sheet off it. One of your books that we both read was Ashbygate, about the, I guess, how was it described? That was basically what was happening in Parliament House when everyone was busy kind of vilifying Julia Gillard in her kind of, the back end of her term. There was this other thing going on.
It's been described by many as basically an attempt, and really a successful attempt to unseat a speaker.
I went further than that. It was an attempt to overthrow an elected government.
Yeah.
They managed to get rid of the speaker, okay, and I think they managed in their second goal too. I mean, they got rolled.
Can you tell us, for a lot of our listeners, because they might not have been across all of this, but can you tell us kind of what happened and what sparked your eye to go chase it and write a book about it?
I was working as an investigator back in 2000, for the last 20 years or so, and I, as part of that job, I did quite a bit of litigated workers' comp stuff. And so I had more than a passing interest in workers' compensation matters. And then James Ashby, who's a gay man, came out and accused the Speaker of the House, Peter Slipper, of sexually molesting him.
Yeah.
And Peter's a Christian minister in some strange corner of the church, I forgot what it's called, some part of the Catholic Church, and is a man of he presents as a man of high moral rectitude.
Yep.
And so when James came out and said, mate, you've been filling me up, then everybody went wild.
Yeah.
And
the shit hit the fan.
What happened, of course, is she hit the fan in the Murdoch press. Didn't hit the fan anywhere else in the first place, because Murdoch was involved completely in the whole plot to do it from the very start.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
How high did it go up in News Corp?
Well, I don't know, but I know I can't say, but I know inside News Corp were intimately involved in the whole process. It was part of their thing. In fact, Justice Rares, when he threw the matter out of court, said clearly that James Ashby had conspired with Mel Brough and others to overthrow the government. So it was that triumvirate of Ashby being an opportunist,
Yep.
the Liberal Party wanting to get rid of Slipper, overthrow the government, and corruption generally, as it all goes.
So again, for a lot of our listeners and readers who might not know, is that James Ashby has found a new home in Canberra. He's ended up working for Pauline Hanson,
Chief of Staff.
Yeah, what would make him so employable after he's just essentially toppled a government from the inside?
Well, one of the main reasons is he never suffered any repercussions for it. There was no consequences for what he did, so he walked away from the whole matter scot-free.
Yep.
Which is why, after I went through it, I'm still gobsmacked that he did. He abused the court system, and they quite clearly. So, and that all sort of trickled to an end in sort of 2013, 14. And it was at the rise of Pauline, her comeback thing was 2015, roughly. She started again, 2014. Her ex-chief of staff, or the ex-head of Pauline Hanson One Nation, a guy called Ian Nelson, Ashby contacted him. This is how much of an opportunist Ashby is. Ashby contacted him out of the blue and said, mate, I can print all your Pauline Hanson's material at half price, because he had a printing business called Black Bull.
Yeah.
And Nelson went, oh, good, mate. And he said, but I'd like to meet Pauline. Ah, fine, no worries. And as soon as James got to near Pauline, he clicked into gear, and they're an item. Not sexually an item.
Yeah.
Well, I've heard rumours, but...
Yep.
Yeah.
But they're an item, and they've been together. And then they did the tour in that little aircraft.
In that airplane,
little Jabiru.
So he owned the plane, which kind of meant he had the plane, which meant he had Pauline.
He had the wet lease.
Yeah.
So that's so opportunistic, isn't it?
Oh, nobody knows who owns that plane.
Yeah, right.
No one knows. No.
It's never been revealed where that plane comes from. They wrote off some expenses of the aircraft in One Nation, against One Nation, but only little bits, a couple of services, a couple of other little things. So there was never any admission of ownership.
Yeah.
James has always said he didn't own it. It was clearly somebody coughed up for it and stuffed up.
The type of person that puts $1 million into a blind trust, maybe.
Yeah, that sort of person. Well, yeah, that's right.
And and then he was a cunning operator in the sense that all of the candidates who put their hands up to run for Pauline, for whatever reason that party appealed to them and they wanted to represent, the people through One Nation, it was later found that Ashby had them signed up to, they had to pay their way to become a candidate, and the party made a bomb off these people who, and not all of them even got a start, which probably speaks to the reason that almost within minutes of her landing them all a Senate place, they all rolled on her and went independent. The only one who stayed loyal was Malcolm Roberts, who ended up losing his job in the citizenship scandal when they realised he was the son of a Scottish man born in British India.
Yeah.
And then obviously he got back in, moved to the top of the ticket 3 years later. When you look at this system and the people that are allowed to operate within it, are you seeing some people that, if they didn't have Parliament House, they'd be pouring barrels of poison into rivers? Are we dealing with some proper psychopaths?
Oh, I give you Clive Palmer.
Yeah. Yeah, well, he's doing both.
I'm not accusing Clive of being a psychopath.
No, mate, it's got me fucked how he's still walking around.
Well, they do the same with their... it strikes me that what he's doing at the moment is it's a power play for his resource business, for his mining and his greed and his digging stuff up.
Yep.
And that's what it's all about. It's not about getting political power back anymore. When I said before we were talking about how many you need to get a party, 5, now it's 1,500. The other way to get a party for free is have a sitting member join you, and you go, right, okay, I've now got a political party.
Yep.
So he gets Kelly across. So they've got a political party, and if
That's in the last month. Craig Kelly's moved across.
If Palmer's doing what he did last time, it's you find some poor sap to run in every seat in the country. So you've got to run in every single seat, and which is what are you doing? And even though you've got tons of money, you make them pay for it because why not? So you get all these people to pay for the seat. You run in every seat in the country, and then you can say to the libs, mate, what about your preferences?
Yeah,
if you give me that, I'll give you that bit over there. And I'm not accusing Clive of any illegal activities.
Mate,
He's a litigious man. We never would.
It stinks of just
but it does stink
of just taking the votes that have essentially bled from the Liberal Party and taking them and redirecting them back to the Libs.
Especially after what he did to Queenslanders, how he has
all of his poor bloody workers, that he's just
dudded.
Yeah, there's certain towns he won't visit anymore. But the only positive we do get from this kind of that kind of bizarre political play is we end up with people like Jackie Lambie who end up being lifers. That's probably the only positive I can think of this whole Clive Palmer experiment is that he accidentally gave us Jackie. And she'll get re-elected. But you're starting to see a little bit of this growing independent in Parliament because we've got the safe Labor seats, we've got the marginal Labor seats, and then particularly in the Senate, people like to give someone else a go. We've got the safe Liberal seats. And in fact, we're starting to see the most unsafe Liberal seats are what used to be their blue ribbon. I reckon Zali will get back in in Tony Abbott's old seat. And we saw Karen Phelps with the shortest term in political history down there. North Sydney, and then some of the Brisbane's Liberal inner city, we start getting these wives of bankers and husbands of bankers who are, a bit worried about the climate or a bit worried about, wealth disparity. And we're starting to see a kind of a chink in the government's armour in that sense.
Kooyong too, I think.
Yeah.
Kooyong, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, where...
Old Josh.
No. Where, what's his name, that lawyer, he tried to out Kooyong Josh.
Yeah. No, he didn't get up.
From Kooyong. I'm from Kooyong.
What would you say the archetypical Finn voter would look like in your mind?
Oh, it's remarkable. Our memberships, we've got people in the 90s down to 18.
Yep.
We've got really, quite seriously, we've got across Australia, it's remarkable when you look at it, the range of people. So there's nothing that unifies people by age or demography that we can see.
Yep. Yeah, okay. And it's going to be an interesting election, as we've seen with the state elections, that One Nation might have had their run. We saw that in the Queensland state election, certainly. And what we always see, and what the Labor Party don't like mentioning, is that One Nation bleed from Labor, and they go back to Labor. Once they've had that pressure valve of getting Pauline in, they do go back to Labor in the more rural Labor seats, traditional Labor seats. Do you think your policies, or basically your MO, will resonate with the bush? And what kind of corruption have you seen on that level in kind of Nat heartlands?
Well, we can start with gas. Where do you want to step? Water?
Yeah.
Start with gas. We'll go up to Narrabri.
Yeah, well, the Narrabri, the whole gas fields up there.
In the Pilliga.
Yeah, the Pilliga.
Yeah.
The Murray-Darling Basin for water.
On the Bidge too. That's even worse.
Yeah. There are many of them.
Sports routes.
I think because the Liberals have no qualms about brutalising the country, I think a lot of Nat seats probably will become vulnerable as the environmental impacts kick in of what
they have down
doing.
in New South Wales. I mean, they've gone bananas out there. Bloody the shooters, fishers and farmers, they're, stealing some seats off the National Party, just like their gigs of water.
Yeah.
They're just going missing.
Yeah.
Yeah, what was that one down there on Victoria's Fringe as well? Victorian
Down on the Murray.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was taken
Far
by
west of New
independent.
South Wales.
Yeah. Yeah, no, there's a lot to really point a stick at. When you really want to sit down, maybe we'll do that close to the election. We'll sit down and rattle off every scandal, every.
I was nearly going to bring a list, but
because we do have the sports rorts, we have the car park rorts, even to the point where we're now seeing all the bushfire aid isn't given to seats held by the Liberal Party. What was that? part of the Blue Mountains that really got a lick during the bushfires.
Where Suzanne Templeman.
Yeah. They just, she's from the wrong party, so the people there who got most affected by the bushfires.
No, because I think her part of the Blue Mountains has got all the apples in it, and it went to the highway part where they're all libs.
Yeah. So it's a
buddy. No, that used to be Paul Keating's. Out there at the division of Blackland, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Blackland, yeah.
Yeah, Blackland. Yeah, no, there's a lot you can point at. Have you had any media interest, or is this not in their interest to be interested?
It's not in their interest.
No. Well, it's in our interest. We're happy to have you on today, Ross.
We obviously Independent Australia helps us out.
Yeah.
And we do what we can. We're on Blue Mountains Radio the other day.
Yeah. That'll get them.
Every time. So no, we're not really. The mainstream media don't like us very much.
Yeah, you're not going to get your talk back kind of plugs in the way Pauline does every time they want to rattle the cage. Yeah,
and a lot of it
from Benny Fordham
is because we did come out of the pages of Independent Australia, I suppose, to start with. And a lot of the mainstream media really don't like Independent Australia because we've broken some stories that they then claim to have for themselves.
Yep.
Always referred to as disparagingly as a blog. Despite the fact it's far from it.
Yeah.
But so they just disparage it and write it off all the time. But each readers know what it is.
So, we'll do the call out now. We've got the preference whisperer. If you're listening in, we need you to do your magic. Fordham, if you're listening in, Hadley, if you're listening in, mate. It's media suppression to not interview these blokes. And of course, today's show, Sunrise, Koshy Carl. Give him a look in. That's all it takes. There's only one reason why we saw Pauline Hanson clean up in 2016 and again in 2019. It's because you blokes couldn't get enough of her. Yeah. And neither could your audiences.
Pauline Hanson got elected because of Michael Rowland last time. I mean, he just spoke about her all day and night on that ABC television show of his. But if you're interested in more information about the Federal ICAC party, about joining it, you can just go to www.federaliCACnow.org and you'll find out all the information there, contact, events, news, how to join.
Free to join.
If you want to volunteer, it is free to join. It's not like Clive Palmer's party where he'll hold you upside down by your ankles and shake all the money out of you just to get a look in.
I do like the logo you're working with here. Fin, Federal ICAC now with a shark fin.
Yeah.
Okay, this is going to make them nervous.
Yeah, it is a good logo.
Well, thanks for joining us today, Ross. I think this is an interesting development in Australian politics. This conversation's happening at the ballot, which I think it needs to, and I think a lot of people will agree it needs to. So, yeah. Well, let's see if you can get those 300 extras now that they've changed the rules on you. 300 extra members, and then let's see what you get.
It's a great excuse to finally learn how to vote properly in the Senate. I mean, just don't go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Look for a fin.
Yeah, look for a fin. Look for the big black fin.
Go back through and learn and vote properly.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us.